Golly, with this magic staff, I can wish for a Supergirl.
Hi, Jimmy.
Nope. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Today I'm taking a long overdue look at the DC Multiverse Gold Label Target exclusive Supergirl. Starting with the packaging, and Supergirl is very lucky that I normally rubber stamp this section. It's pretty much just a normal DC Multiverse window box, save of course for the gold label. On the side we see this is Supergirl from DC Rebirth. She's a Target exclusive, but for those who want the UPC, here you go. No DC Universe Infinite this time, but we do get a really nice picture of Kara on the back. Kinda looks like she's leaving a rainbow. At the very least, she's leaving her clothes. I really like this artwork, and you can bet we'll be referring back to it in presentation. Referring back to the front of the box though, and did you catch it? They didn't even center her name right. These boxes are so uniform that 90% of the work is just changing text, so this category should have been a gimme. Instead, for packaging, I'm giving Supergirl half a point. Moving on to presentation, and Supergirl stands at 6 3/4 inches. At a glance and set way back, Supergirl looks pretty nice, but the devil's in the details, and McFarlane cut a lot of corners this time around. From the top, and let me just get this out of the way, I see a lot of hate online for this head, and I just don't agree. I see people comparing it anywhere from the movie White Chicks to Michael Jackson. Personally, she reminds me of a young Vanna White. Your mileage may vary, but I think that Supergirl should look wholesome. And I particularly love the hair. The sculpting and the color and shading are all very nice and natural, and it gives me a strong Helen Slater vibe. The sculpting on the upper torso is very nice as well. Note the panel lines on the sides. They're a definite match for what we see on the box. And speaking of matching, they've done a great job of matching the blues and reds of their recent Superman figures. Regarding the reds, I'm very happy with the sculpting and especially the texturing of the skirt. Unfortunately, that's where the positives end. Infamously, this Supergirl is reuse of Nightfall Catwoman. Remember that upper torso I was just gushing about? Well, right below that is this random zipper. Those blue sleeves aren't blue sleeves at all. They're actually gloves. And that skirt that's covering her suspiciously completely covered legs? That's to hide the thigh-high boot tops and the fact that the legs are completely red. Referring back to Exhibit A, that is completely inaccurate. This is by far one of the laziest things I've ever seen McFarlane do. And it goes right back to the frustrations I talked about in my Nightfall Catwoman review. In that video, I also complained about the zipper, mainly because Nightfall Catwoman shouldn't have one. This was an all-new sculpt at the time, so they didn't have to put that there. And had they not put that there and didn't include the seam lines on the upper torso, no one would have been the wiser. As a huge fan of Marvel Legends, I would be a hypocrite if I complained about reuse, but if you're gonna do it, you've gotta do it right. A blank body needs to be just that, a blank body. It's my same issue with Blue Beetle and John Kent. This is honestly a great medium build body, and I see why they use it for lots of characters. Heck, I've specifically said in previous videos that I hope they use this for Hal Jordan. But every one of the upcoming characters like Nightwing and Animal Man have this sculpted on boot top, and don't even get me started with John Kent. Every reuse of him has the same sculpted bit here, and also the ankle cuffs. Again, I'm not complaining about reuse, I'm complaining about lazy reuse. I'm talking about sculpted details that don't match the rest of the figure and just asking the customer to pretend that they're not there. A lot of people have been using the mid-torso section of Last Night on Earth Wonder Woman, and depending on which run of the comic you read, that's completely accurate. In fact, if McFarlane had just sculpted this version of Supergirl, they could have gotten 2 figures out of it. I'm also baffled by the choice to go for a cloth goods cape. People ask me in the comments if I prefer soft goods or sculpted capes, and honestly it depends. Mostly what I like is consistency. Since every other DC Multiverse Superman cape is sculpted, I'd want all of them to be sculpted. If they were all cloth goods, I'd want them to be all cloth goods. That said, side by side they don't look terrible, but I'm also confused as to why McFarlane went for this gold version of the logo, when again, Nobody else has it. It's just another layer where it doesn't really fit with the rest of the series. Lastly, if you're gonna say it's Rebirth Supergirl, and show us artwork of Rebirth Supergirl, you really need to use the logo of Rebirth Supergirl. On the other hand, though, it does make it easier for those of us who want to customize the classic. Silver linings aside, though, and for presentation, I'm giving this Supergirl 0 points. Moving on to posability, and I'm sure I'm not going to have anything critical to say whatsoever. Not a thing. From the top, and this is a long-haired figure, so we know what that means. She can't look up, she can't tilt, but she can look down a bit and turn side to side. Moving on down, and her arm popped right off. Fortunately, that's an easy fix. Without popping off, it can raise to just under 90 degrees. There is a rotator cuff, but you're not really getting a whole lot out of it. Bicep swivel at Catwoman's glove. The fact that it's a glove becomes even more pronounced as we bend our double-jointed elbow. And then McFarlane wrist balls that can swivel, and then hinge either side to side, or up and down. Moving to the middle, and although I've talked about this to death, now we're going to mention the diaphragm joint and dumbbell waist. She can arch back this far, which for a flying character is pretty decent, and she can hunch forward this far. Fortunately, Supergirl does get tilt and twist. Below the belt, and I'm going to assume she has the typical McFarlane hips. Because of the skirt, I can't really tell. She can only kick this high and split this wide. No twists, unfortunately, but she does get very impressive double knee bend, toe articulation, and ankles that can swivel, hinge really deep, and just like my excitement for this figure the moment I saw it, pivot. In McFarlane's defense, female figures historically struggle with articulation, especially because of things like hair and skirts. So I do want to be fair. Something as minor as a small slit on the side would have done at least a little bit to help. They could have also done one on the back, and thanks to the cape, no one would have ever even noticed. I don't know, maybe they were just concerned that any kind of slit would expose the lazy reuse under the skirt, and you should never expose what's going on underneath a lady's skirt. That said, I'm not so much of a gentleman that I'm not still gonna docker points. For posability, I'm giving Supergirl half a point. Moving on to playability, and Kara comes with a trading card and a figure stand. If you're wondering which of her bajillion origins they've gone with, you can pause here and read it for yourself. What fascinates me is she doesn't just come with a figure stand. She also comes with a flight stand. And while having display options is nice, it's the kind of thing that feels like they're trying to add value without actually adding value. I actually just talked about this in my Action Comics #1 video. Luckily, playability is more than just accessories, it's also about how well your figure plays with others. First up, and for the best Supergirl figure ever made, leastways in my opinion, here we have DC Icons. Next, and for my second favorite car, and here we have DC Essentials. And then for the other DC Multiverse Supergirls of 2023, here we have The Flash, and Karen Zor-El from Injustice 2. For all of you out there who don't like this head sculpt, I'll take it over this one any day. For the most important comparisons though, and here we have her cousin Superman. This one is Action Comics 1000. This one is from Hush with very nicely matching blues and reds. And this is my combination of the two, which I think looks great but does still need new hands. Since we're about to get a more classic style cowl based on this body mold, here we have page punchers. But for a few more options, and here's the DC Direct John Byrne version. NECA with matching cloth goods capes. DC Essentials, who side by side with this Supergirl looks more like classic Superboy. And the DC Multiverse Dark Knight Returns body with the Rebirth head. Since I can't go one of these videos without talking about Batman, here we have Rebirth and 3 Jokers, and then here we have Nightfall in the blue and gray version of Hush. Hush being the closest to how he looked in the Jeff Loeb Michael Turner Supergirl comic. That said, if you want an all-girls world's finest, here's a Batgirl I cobbled together. It's the Bat Family 5-pack head and cape on the 3 Jokers body. Moving over to the rest of the Superman family though, and here's John Kent's Superman, whose reds and blues are a really great match, as well as Con-El's Superboy. This brings us to Superboy Prime and some Superman villains. Is that all I am to you anymore? Just a transition from Superboy to other Superman villains? Here we have Bizarro. Next up is General Zod, Lex Luthor in his battlesuit, Atomic Skull also in Lex Luthor's battlesuit. Ugh, are you going to make that joke every time? Injustice 2 Brainiac, and then for just one more Superman comparison, here we have Christopher Reeve. For relative scale comparison, here's Kara with Pizza Spidey on the Spectacular Spider-Man. And as always, here she is with Stealth Iron Man. At this point in the video, I'm sure a lot of you guys are hoping I'm going to do some head swaps, but I'm going to hold off on that until I have some other ideas for sprucing up this Supergirl. In the meantime, I did get a request in the comments to show her head on the Superwoman body. That person was interested in her as a possible basis for a Black Canary, and I say, yeah, go for it. On that note, and here's Supergirl's head on the Drowned. The high collar makes it hard for her to look straight, but I can still see this working. As long as I have the head off though, I should probably warn you that the red of the cape is actually bleeding onto the plastic. Mixed in amongst the rest of your similarly colored Superman family, she blends in okay. Just don't look too closely. Otherwise, with nothing but figure stands, she doesn't really have a whole lot to offer. For playability, I'm giving Supergirl another half a point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. There have been a lot of awesome DC Multiverse figures this year. In fact, I'd say there's more good ones than not. So many, in fact, that I can't wait to count down my top 10. Sadly, this figure won't be among them. As a $20 Target exclusive, I really can't recommend this figure unless you're a customizer looking for a project. For price, I'm giving Supergirl half a point for my lowest score ever of 2 out of 5. Was I too harsh, or am I right on the money? Sound off in the comments and let me know your favorite comic version of Supergirl. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.